to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish them, and how they market them. You can find us on YouTube. Just search my name, Linda Maria Frank, click on my picture, and you will see about, more than 100 interviews. And you'll get some very interesting information from the author's point of view and from the reader's point of view about books, especially local talent. We're also on Facebook. Just look for The Writer's Dream. We are on cable television Thursday afternoon at 2:30. So if you have cable TV, channel 20, tune in. And today's guest is a lady who has written some very interesting books, and she is a repeat guest, Nanci LaGarenne. Hi, Nanci, how are you?
Hi, Linda. I'm well, thanks.
Let me tell our viewers a few things about you. You live in Montauk Point, which is, of course, a very interesting place and a great setting for books. You worked as a teacher assistant at an autistic place called the Retreat. You did karaoke. I love karaoke. I have to tell you, I love karaoke. In a bar called the Liar's Saloon. And all of these things, plus your writing, have come together to make you an interesting writer with a lot of material. So I see that you've taken advantage of that, and you've written 2 books that are connected, Cheap Fish and The Bitter End. And what was the impetus for you to write these books? Because I have to put them together.
Okay, first I just want to straighten a couple of things out. Sometimes it gets confusing because I spent so much time working in Montauk and socializing in Montauk. I have so many friends. So I actually live in East Hampton, have for the past 30-something years, live in Whalebone Woods. So I don't live in Montauk, but work there. And I did work for the Retreat, which I wasn't a teacher. I was an autistic teaching assistant in the city when I lived in Brooklyn before we moved out here. And I have been a teacher's aide in Amagansett School. But so that's, other than that, everything else is right. So the impetus for the book was at the end of Cheap Fish. It was so well received and people loved it, especially in Montauk, but even anywhere, anybody that loves Montauk, anybody that loves fishing. It was a book that was read by, as one guy told me, I don't read books, but there was this giant tuna on the cover with not the main character. He wasn't the main character, this person who's on the cover of Cheap Fish, who I did interview about fishing stories, and he was great. But he thinks it's him, and I purposely changed the age of him. He was in his 40s. He's probably 50 now, I think. And so I made the character older because I didn't want it to be confused, but yet people were insisting that, yes, that could be him. Others were like, it isn't him, but it's this other guy. So they would assign characters to the people that weren't real people, although there are some real people in Cheap Fish, like the Admiral Joey Flapjaws is a real person. That's not his real name, but he recently passed, but he's a character in Cheap Fish because he was a character in real life. So at the end of Cheap Fish, people said, we need a sequel. We need more. I didn't leave it open-ended. At the end of Cheap Fish, the main character leaves and goes to the Florida Keys. But then I started thinking about it. I wrote another book and sent it out to publishers. I'm still sending it to agents, which takes place in California, a story about a cold case, a true cold case that I solved fictionally. But that's a whole other story. Mm-hmm. So then I decided, you know what? I think I will write this sequel to Cheap Fish. I think I will see what happens. What if the main character, Dragger, comes back and goes back to Montauk 6 years later? So 2013 was when Cheap Fish came out. What if it's 6 years later and Montauk has changed, which it has? And so it was easy to write. And I could also get some things that I'm passionate about because I am an activist to save the aquifer, to stop the sand mines from polluting and so forth. So I'm very active in that. I'm co-head of a group, a local neighborhood group, community group, to stop that and to save our aquifer out here, our sole source aquifer. So I got to put that in the book, and how a lot of local people felt displaced. What happened to our town? Like, it's great for tourism for everyone to come to Montauk and have a great time, but there's also this other bit about leaving things as you found them, taking good care of the beaches, not polluting. When you get inundated with so many guests for the summer, it got out of hand. There were lots of, look, we all like to have a good time and go have a drink, or even if you don't drink, go hear some music. But it became like party central, and some people moved away. I have friends who moved away and people I know that just couldn't take it anymore. And they just said, it's not what I recognize. I can't go out. I can't go to the beach. I can't do this. So that was, I included that, but it's a murder mystery. So there's a whole new murder, not related to the first book. And some characters come back, but there's a lot of new ones.
Yeah, that's, having lived on Long Island all my life, and of course, if you live on Long Island, well, I don't know if that's a true statement, what I was going to say, but I've gone out to Montauk all my life, just, because it's so beautiful and it's so interesting. And the change in Montauk from the time I was a teenager and was able to do that, and now is astonishing. But I must say, in the last few years, Suffolk County has done a lot to stem the pollution, to try to keep the environment, especially the eastern end. And I know there was a movement at some time to form a new county called Peconic County, and that never went anywhere. But I'm always impressed when I go out to the east end, the things that people do to try to preserve what is an incredibly beautiful and unique place. So I'd like you to talk about the elements of Montauk that you bring into the books, that are things that people who don't live on Long Island and don't know Montauk. I mean, we call it the end, affectionately the end, because the next thing after Montauk is Paris. So, that's how we look at it. But for people who don't know Long Island, tell us about some of the elements of Montauk that figure into your book.
So Montauk is unique in that, yes, the whole East End is wonderful, and I do love East Hampton. But Montauk, when you cross that stretch, when you drive over the Napeague stretch, which separates, for people that don't know, as you leave Amagansett, you drive for a long time. In summer, when I was working in Montauk a couple of years ago, at Vintage Pink in downtown, it took me a half hour to 40 minutes to drive from East Hampton to Montauk. I was like commuting, which you never think of, because I think it's 11 miles from Napeague, and so maybe 13 from East Hampton, which shouldn't take 40 minutes, but in the summer there was bumper to bumper traffic. So Montauk is, once you cross that stretch and you're coming into Montauk and you're going over a crest and you see the ocean. Or if you take the old highway, you have a choice. There's a fork. You can go on the stretch, keep going on the new highway, as we call it, and as it is called, or the old Montauk Highway, which I always take because it's on the ocean. And it takes longer, but to me, I can drive slower and I can also see the ocean. And there's something that happens every single time you drive there. It doesn't matter if you've driven like me. I've been driving out there since I'm 17 when I worked out there. The first time I came, excuse me, to the East End. And it happens every single time. You feel differently. Something happens. I don't know if it's because of the ocean. And then you drive into town and you see it right before you, and and then you're driving along and you see all the different motels. And yeah, there's a lot going on. There's Montauk by day, which I know very well because I drive out there to do yoga with friends of mine at my friend's house. There's a whole daytime Montauk. There's every day people are working, going to their jobs at the post office. There's the Chamber of Commerce. There's the ladies that plant the flowers in the window boxes along the town and keep the green beautiful, where they have the farmers market, which happens every Thursday in Montauk. And then there's the nighttime Montauk, which is, a whole other scene where there's all the bars and the restaurants and the delicious, and then the docks. The docks it's like a country unto itself with the fishing and the fishing boats. And in that sense, Montauk hasn't changed at all. It could be 1970 or even 1950 in a lot of ways. when you drive down and park and you walk out to the docks, because the old boats, the fishing boats, they look the same. They look, and there's the guy, there's the fisherman cleaning his catch, the commercial fisherman. You can buy fish there. There's Gosman's. So Montauk is unique in that way. I mean, all the hamlets are, as they're called, are unique in their own way. I love Sag Harbor, East Hampton, but also Montauk doesn't have a lot of the, the she that East Hampton sort of did, we feel like sold out in a way. Where are all the mom and pops? Now, it's happening to Montauk too, which is kind of sad. And that's the lament of the locals, which I did talk about in the book in a funny way, in a frustrated way. The main character is not having it. He's not having it one bit. Like, he wants an egg sandwich and he feels like, where's he going to get one? And it's like going to cost $25. And what the heck happened to the, the Chinese restaurant, and where's this place? And what's with all the, the gluten-free stuff, and can he even get like a stack of pancakes anymore? And so it's, but listening to people, and if you read the letters, like in the local papers, and especially the East Hampton Star, which I talk about in the paper and in the book, as where the murders are splashed across the front page, the fictional murders, of course. You see that people write letters and they complain and they talk about stuff that's happening, like the wind turbines that they want to put out in the fishing grounds. That's a very volatile subject. It's very controversial. And so it's still going on. And I understand that because I hung out with fishermen. That's where we worked, in the bar doing karaoke. And that's their livelihood. What happens to them? This was a farming and a fishing place, as you know. What happens now? My son lives in one of my son lives in California. The other worked in the city. Now he moved out here. He's able to find work, and raise my grandchildren here. But most of the local kids had to move away, unless you can get a teaching job, unless you're going to become a cop, or what are you going to do? Or you have a business, or you inherited a business, or you become a generation farmer or fisherman, bayman. Look what happened to the baymen and everything. Look at Truck Beach, as it's called. Now it's turning private. That's a big issue. I don't talk about that in the book because it's mostly Montauk that I'm talking about. But yeah, so I was able to talk about these things, but in a way that bring it into the story, weave it in. But the main character, he's a bit of a curmudgeon, but also he lived out there. He was a commercial fisherman his whole life. Doesn't do it anymore because the old joints can't take it, and he retired. But could he even live in the town he was born in the book? Can he live there anymore and recognize it?
Right. So you actually use the characters to bring out the problems that you wanted to talk about in the book. And tell us about Dragger.
Dragger was born and raised in Montauk. He was a commercial fisherman, a dragger, and worked on the boats. Went away. They go away for weeks at a time. And he was married. The marriage went south because he was a drinker. Loved his Jack Daniels. Now, in Cheap Fish, he talks about his Jack Daniels, his sort of love affair with Jack Daniels, because he's finished drinking, but he already wrecked his marriage. He tried to get back with his ex-wife. They had a little fling in Cheap Fish, but it didn't pan out. And they have 2 daughters together. And one lived in town and the other lived in California, but would come back because they were Montauk girls at heart, and they could fillet a fish like anybody else, and catch a fish, fillet a fish, and cook the fish. And I know fisher women out in Montauk who can do just that. And they can hold their own with any fisherman. And so there's that. And Dragger left Montauk, but it's in his blood, as I say in the book. He had to come back. And he says he will die in Montauk. His old bones will be laid to rest. And a lot of people, he's very kind of caustic. He says what he wants. His language is very salty, and some people like him and some people don't, but he doesn't really care.
Well, you refer to the fishermen as the salties, right?
The salties, well, he told me that. He said, I'm a salty, the salties, because the guy that I interviewed for the book, for the character and for the book, although he's not the character, I have to keep saying that, but people insist, he insisted. Yes, so the commercial fishermen are called salties and the sports fishermen are called sporties. And so in the first book, it was the salty, the sporty, and the tree hugger, which was a guy who showed up in Montauk who became partners for the brothel boat, along with the ex-bartender at Liars, who was a woman. She became the madam. And
yes, and with those two terms, madam and brothel boat, you have just raised your sales tremendously.
well, I met people. There was one local place in Amagansett, a fish store, and he sold my book in the fish store. That's the beauty about living out here. There's no place, if I lived any place else, would they carry my book, especially an independent book, a self-published book. You know the stigma, right? Everyone will carry it.
I do.
And he said, I'll carry it. And I said, but you're a fish store. Where are you going to even put it? He goes, I'll put it up here on the counter. Just bring it in. He was
Next to the crabs, between the crabs and the lobster.
Yeah. And he said, all the fishermen come in here with the fish. Where do you think I buy the fish? They're going to come in. They're going to want the book. And sure enough, I would go there to see if he needed more books or to buy fish. And somebody would say, did you write that book? Where's that boat? And I said, no, it's made up. There is no boat. There's a boat. And he insisted, they would insist that there was this. And I said, listen, yeah, maybe they thought about starting a boat, but they never did. And, but I'm glad you're enjoying the book. So yeah, it had a wide audience, but yeah, that would definitely get people interested.
Of course, what piques my interest is the plot revolves around some crimes, some murders, because I'm a mystery writer. Why don't you hold up the book?
Okay.
We can see that beautiful cover. There you go. I like that. That's very arty.
Thanks. I took this picture on a walk out by Camp Hero. Now, you know about Camp Hero and the whole history with that. And it was this kind of a day, a hazy day. And a friend of mine so there was the lighthouse in the distance. And I took the picture and I had it. My son has it. He lives in our old house. We live in an attached accessory apartment. And he has it on the wall. And I thought, I was going with a different picture that I also took. And then I said, you know what? When I had the name of the book, I thought, which could also be sort of, have a double meaning. The bitter end is actually what a lot of people call it. Liars had a sign under the Liars sign that said the bitter end. That's not where I got it. I just thought of, the story and also about Montauk being called the end, but a lot of people were bitter about it. But so we're sort of a play on words. And then I thought that picture, it's kind of a hazy day, that kind of suits it. So I went with it.
No, I like it. It's a beautiful cover. So, which leads us a little bit into marketing. You're self-published, as I am, as almost everybody I know is. But marketing, besides having it between the crabs and the lobster in the fish store, what else do you do to market?
So, as you know, as writers, we just want to write, and we're not marketing people. I never worked in marketing. I worked in retail, but that's a whole different thing. I didn't have to convince somebody to buy anything. You work at the Gap, they come in, they buy their stuff, and you check them out. That's not my forte. I'm not like a salesperson. I like to talk about books, and I'm not shy, but I'm also not, but sometimes I am shy. So you actually, with self-publishing, as you know, you have to go out and peddle the books.
I know.
Luckily, with Cheap Fish, because it was such a local book, and because it was the subject and the fishermen and the brothel, it was carried in marinas. It was carried in stationery stores. It was carried in White's drugstore. And the wonderful bookstore that was in Montauk, he carried it and he put it in the window with the regular books. We do write regular books, but you know what I mean? Like the real published books, right?
Yeah.
And I did a reading there. I did signings. I did a book signing at Liars and the Hula Hut. Because people were so generous about it. Maybe because they knew us from karaoke, because my husband and I but also because that's also Montauk. Montauk is like, come on out and here's some good music. Oh, Nanci wrote a book. Like, that is Montauk. That's the Montauk I know. Not when people come out and say, what happened to this place? And I don't know anybody. I went to the bar and I didn't know a soul. Where are all the regulars? And I'm like, well, the regulars sort of stay away because they're, you know, they're a little bit, yeah. But yeah. So I had it in places. Burton's had it in Greenport. I didn't have it in Bookhampton, which I mentioned because it was really kind of sad because I live in East Hampton and people said, I'll go to the bookstore. And I said,
Hampton is tough. I've done all of
for it, right? And then I talked to the owner because I'm a little relentless. And I felt bad about it. And I thought, you know what? Go talk to her because I buy all my books there. And so does my family, my sons, my friends. So I said to her, she was called Charlene, can't you carry my books? I'm local. You have a local shelf, but I can't be on it. So I kind of wore her down because when they hear Amazon and Amazon Create Space, or in this case, Kindle Direct Publishing, listen, I don't have $1 million or $15,000 to publish a book and hire editors and marketing people. So we have to do what we can do to get our work out there.
Well, there's two things I think that you have to, with marketing, is you have to look at your book, and your book is going to appeal to a certain group of people. Like my books appeal to children, so I go to schools to market. Yours appeals to fishermen, so you've done that piece of it. And the other thing is that I go on the internet and I look at all these little sites who charge you $10 a year to put your book and whatnot. And for very little money, I am able to get my books on the internet. And then I also enter contests. I don't enter the big expensive ones. I do the cheap ones. I have a budget. And what happens with some of these places is that you are actually able to get reviews even if you don't win, they offer you reviews. And then I put the reviews on Amazon. But I have the same problem. I don't know anybody else who has self-published, or I know very few people who have self-published who have a big Amazon sales record. However, I'll give you a tip that's worked out for me. Do the audiobook. My audiobooks sell like hotcakes.
Okay. Yes, I'm looking into that. In fact, I got in touch with, through a webinar that I did, somebody that does that. And I thought, I don't know what they charge, but I mean, do you read your own book or you have somebody doing it?
No, there's a website. I don't know if I can say it on air, but I'll tell you later. Okay. And they put, you upload your manuscript onto this website, and people bid on it. They're called producers, the people who have the equipment to read the book and record it and make the MP3s, which are the files for each chapter. They bid on it. And you can do one of two things. You can either do what's called royalty share with them. I don't even know if they do that anymore because that's such a deal. Or you pay them. They look at the book. I mean, I've switched over to a person who does this, and they charge by the word because the word tells them how many hours. But it was not that expensive to do. But
I would like to do that. I would love to do that with my other books because I know people that really listen to books while they're driving. And
speak to the karaoke people. They may know somebody who has the recording equipment, right?
Right.
And then you can read your own book, make your own MP3s, and then there are websites where if you have the MP3s, you upload it, and then they put you on the different venues. But that's the important thing, is that wherever you go to do this, they have to upload your book onto things like Audible, ACX, places, of course, that's where they sell.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. Thank you for reminding me because I would like to do that.
So we have about a minute left, and I'm going to ask you a question that I come to ask all authors. Besides your books and mine, what's your favorite book?
Like of all time?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to say The Awakening by Kate Chopin. Okay. It's an old book. I don't know what year it was published, but it spoke to me. It's about a woman who's married and struggling with her own identity as far as, is this all there is? She doesn't relate to the other women because she calls them mother women. They only talk about their children, not themselves. I was a young mother at 20, and I was talking about current events, and I wanted to go back to college because I had left and got married and so forth. And I couldn't relate to anyone. So when I read that book, you know, when you read a book and it kind of resonates so much with you. So that's probably my favorite book. But there's so many great authors. I loved Caleb Carr when he wrote The Alienist,
Yes.
and the Angel of Darkness.
Yes.
And then I read his next book, and it was like a futuristic, and I'm like, no, write more about old New York and all these great characters. That Alienist was wonderful.
Yeah.
So I love him. I love Chris Bojalian, The Witch's Hour, and I read everything. I read constantly. That's how this all started. My dad used to say, this one has always got our head in a book, you know, and my mother said, well, that's okay. And part of it was an escape from what was going on around me, you know, all the chaos and stuff sometimes. But writers read. People always ask, how do you start writing? I said, do you read? And some people don't. I'm like, you have to read if you want to write. And you have to write if you want to write.
That is absolutely the best advice. The best advice for a new writer is read, 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 read.
Read everything. I read papers. My husband laughs. We'll go somewhere. I'm picking up all the papers, whatever, free papers. And he's like, are you going to read all that? And I said, yep, cover to cover. I'm going to read everything because I love to read, you know, fiction, nonfiction, current events. Yeah, I write for Rebel Society, which is when I get to talk about stuff going on in the world. And sometimes it's tongue in cheek. Sometimes it's not. I love to tell the truth. So I have lots of stories. And yeah. So
this is fun, Nanci. This is really
fun. It's so good to see you again. I can't wait to see you in person. Yeah.
I know. Those book events, anything.
Anything, right. Getting out there again. Doing that book talk. I did it in a barn, so the doors were open and there weren't a lot of people, but it was so good to be out there again, connecting with people.